Welcome to the Collaborative. I'm your host, Sydney Walker, along with Sean Lake, who is filling in as co-host for Ryan Ballas. Today, we are joined by Olivia Garrison. Olivia is production assistant for ESPN. She is responsible for producing creative content, which includes teases, opens, and highlights for various ESPN shows and networks. Olivia graduated from Clemson University and previously completed a postgraduate internship with the NCAA. So welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm super excited to join you. And I just want to say too that I think it's really awesome what you're doing. This little series you have going on is popping off. So congrats to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
First up, we have Sid's This or That. So first, Memorial Stadium or Little John Coliseum?
Memorial Stadium, all the way.
Dog or cat?
Dog.
Car or plane?
Plane.
And last but not least, Deshaun Watson or DeAndre Hopkins?
Ooh. I'm going to have to go with Deshaun just because he won us a national championship and I was there and we're super big buddies. So I'm going to go Deshaun. But I love DeAndre Hopkins too. So it's not even fair. But I'll go with Deshaun.
All right. I agree with that one.
Two total studs, right?
Yeah, I mean, how can you choose wrong, really? But I went with D Watt. So
I got you. So first things first, what is your favorite sports memory that made you excited to have a career in athletics?
Well, that's a really good question. I've had so many cool experiences, but I would say that my most memorable experience in sports is probably when we beat Alabama in the national championship 2 years ago out in California. I was there for the game. I was in the stadium and, just being around the team and the guys and getting the win. It was just such an awesome experience and kind of just surreal. I just sat there and I'm like, wow, I get to do this for my career. And I feel super blessed to be able to do that. But it's hard to pick one, but I guess if I had to pick one, I'd pick that one.
And at Clemson, the attention is usually geared toward the football team, but you worked with the basketball team all 4 of your undergraduate years. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so I kind of got my start in sports at Clemson with the basketball team. I had reached out to a coach when I think I was a senior in high school and just expressed my interest. They, needed someone to come on as kind of like a staff assistant. So I started my first day of freshman year at Clemson. I started with the basketball team, but I was doing more of, office administration, recruiting, event management, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to reporting and production. So I did that for my first year. And then kind of decided I wanted to go more of the production reporting route. So I kind of just used my network from basketball and working in sports with them to network with other people in the football department, just the athletic department in general. But the basketball team, they don't get enough credit, let me tell you. And our football team is obviously our pride and joy at Clemson, but I loved working for the basketball team. I got a lot of different experiences from working with both teams. So I look back and I'm just thankful for that. But it was a great experience working for them for all my 4 years in college.
Excellent. And going off of that, you also contributed to the Clemson Insider, which included producing content, reporting, and writing weekly articles for various sports.
Mm-hmm.
Did you already have a specific concentration and wanted to strengthen your other skills, or did you, or did those various roles help you narrow down a potential career option?
So I went into college in the sports communications, under the sports communications major. It was brand new. So I knew that I wanted to go into reporting. I've known that probably since middle school. So I kind of knew, I would say, going into college that I wanted to get into some kind of network or website to learn more about reporting and producing, but I just didn't really know how I was going to do that. So when I was working for the basketball team, I, met some people through just the network and coaches. And one of the people, they have a website called the Clemson Insider. And with the Clemson, they basically hired me shortly thereafter, after I interviewed for the job and expressed my interest. And, with TCI, I got to do a little bit of everything, which was an awesome experience. I got to interview the players, produce feature stories, do reporting on the field, like during game days, got to host, I got to produce, I got to manage social media. So it was very much an all-encompassing role, and gave me a lot of, versatility and mobility. Now, especially, I look back at, my job at the NCAA, my job here, and I'm just so thankful to have the opportunities from TCI in college, because I learned so much versatility there.
And speaking of the NCAA, they have a fantastic post-grad program that opens up a lot of doors for people.
Yeah.
Did any challenges come along with working for a brand of such high caliber? If so, what was your biggest takeaway from that experience?
Yeah, my experience with the NCAA was incredible. If any of you guys are interested in the program, first, I just want to say, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk to you guys about, the program itself and all the opportunities that are within it. But yeah, so I started as the digital communications intern. And that role was kind of all encompassing as well. And that's why it was so appealing to me when I was interviewing for it. I wanted to host, I wanted to report, but I also loved, producing content and being able to handle like my own social media or different companies' social media. So that, position gave me all of those things, which was perfect for me. And, when you ask about handling social media for a huge brand, absolutely, there is so much pressure in that, I think, especially, I was 22, graduating college, and, I was still learning. I was young. So I think it was just all about coming in, learning the ins and outs of the business, networking with people, learning the mission of the company. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to portray? And, it helped me get more comfortable with managing a account that has so many followers. But I think it just comes with reps too. Like in the beginning, obviously, it's going to be a little more uncomfortable, but as you go on, you kind of find your voice. You find the page's voice, the account's voice, but also, find a way to throw a little bit of your personality in there. So it was just, a learning process for me, but it didn't take too long, and it's one of my passions now, I would say. A couple of things that I took away from the experience, I think the biggest thing was, working in a huge corporate office, my communication skills were just so sharpened by that experience. And, it challenged me. It challenged me to speak up in meetings, to pitch ideas, challenged my creative insight and how to innovate and, help our brand grow. And I think also too, another part of it was learning that, you can have a seat at the table and you can have a voice at the table that's valued and that's respected. And I learned that very early on in my career at the NCAA. They're an amazing company, and those are definitely two things that I have taken with me to ESPN.
Launching the ACC Network is a huge project to be on your first time, but also a great rewarding experience. What content strategies were discussed in order to make a decision on launching the ACC Network?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that went into the launch of the network. Like I said beforehand, our whole team we were strategizing and prepping elements that we were going to show on launch night. So we had, we look at all of our ACC teams. We look at the features we want to show, the elements we want to show, season recaps, what sports are we going to discuss. We were in the fall, but, we might want to throw some basketball in there because we're a huge basketball conference. So I think that kind of strategy, just like what kind of direction are we taking this and what kind of elements are we going to show to support those things, was a huge part of it, obviously. But then there's other more, like technical parts of it. We had to figure out who's our talent, who is going to be on TV. Like, we had to do talent auditions, who are going to be the production assistants, who are going to be the content associates, the associate producers, the producers. What branding are we going to use? What shows are we going to have? Which then involves PR, it involves creative services. We all had to learn, the strategy of how to put together a rundown. We had to learn what we're responsible for, what terminology means. But in the experience, I will say that being on a team that started something brand new, we created our own ceiling. So we set our own standards and foundation. And even though there were, always constantly moving pieces and lots of patience while everyone was learning, we set that standard, and that was a really cool experience to be a part of. But there was so much that went into it. I'm sure I missed some stuff, but that's kind of the biggest things that I was a part of.
Would you say the gratification came from the ground up building that project, or when you finally saw it launched and everything came together?
I think that, I'll be honest here, the first couple weeks I was tired and I just wasn't used to like working like that. And so I think the gratification came when everything was done on launch night. I truly believe in enjoying the process, but sometimes, everyone gets bogged down sometimes, especially when everything's so new. So I think that seeing everything come together, being there on launch night, and, just seeing the success of it was extremely satisfying.
Speaking of projects, what has been your favorite project or experience so far, whether it was during your undergrad career or currently at ESPN?
Okay. My favorite project. Wow, that's a hard one. Okay, so I'll do one with the NCAA. So last year with the NCAA, I had so many experiences in traveling to do stories, which was really fun. It's taken me all over the country. But one particular story that I really loved was we went to Malibu, California. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Pepperdine University. So basically, and I'm not sure if you guys remember this either, but basically a couple years ago, Pepperdine almost burned down to the ground because of the wildfires in California. So it really hurt the basketball team and the volleyball team season that year, obviously. And then there was also a shooting that happened down the road from the school. So this was all happening at the same time. And we had learned about the story, and the school had reached out to the NCAA, and we were super interested on just talking to the teams and, learning how they overcame everything. So they agreed to have us out. We flew out to Malibu for, I think, a week or two, and we got to do a story on everything that went down that week. And it was super rewarding because, the basketball team and the volleyball team specifically, everyone was affected, but they were in season. So they showed so much resilience and overcame so much and still had a winning season, even though their school was burning down and a couple people lost their friend in that shooting. And it was an emotional story. It was it was super gratifying just to be a part of it, be a part of telling the story and doing interviews and just, just being able to visualize it to people. And Malibu is also gorgeous and an awesome place to just see the world. So I would say that is probably my favorite story I've worked on.
So after gaining all the expertise you have now, would you go back and change anything, or would you follow the same journey that you took to get to where you are today?
Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. The only thing that I would do is just tell myself to just calm down a little bit. Like, looking back, I think that sometimes we get so caught up in the no's. Like, if you don't get an internship, if you don't get a job, if you have disappointments along the way, it's really hard not to get caught up in those things. And I think I would just tell myself that it's going to be okay, because when I look back, my next opportunity was right around the corner and I didn't even know it. So I wouldn't change anything that I've done or the decisions I've made in my career, but I would just not worry so much about that stuff looking back.
You know, you had all your great work at Clemson, you've worked at the NCAA, and now ESPN. So for anyone who's aspiring to do any of those roles, what advice do you have for them as they pursue it?
Yeah, I think I have a couple things for you guys. And the first one is something that I try to live by it, and it's be where your feet are and be a sponge wherever that may be, And you guys, I know you hear this a lot, but take every opportunity that comes your way, but be present and learn and ask questions, try new things. And through that, just be intentional, be authentic to yourself. Classes, are great, but I think internships and jobs are key. And I think that's been key in my career, just the versatility and experience gained as, I've met, meeting people has led to my next opportunity. I look back and I realize that no job or no person is too small. Another big thing about, when you do get experience, I think it's super important to have a portfolio. If you guys don't have one, that's okay too. But in my experience, just having somewhere to put my work has been, I know employers just really like that. They can see everything. The second thing I would say is just, there's so much to be said for showing up and doing the work, and show up early, like stay late, ask for feedback, stay hungry. It'll take you a long way. And I think another thing about that is have a quiet confidence about yourself. Like in the workplace, no one wants to be cocky, but there is something to be said for being confident in your work and, but being quiet about that, but people notice it. Another thing I would say is, how we always hear, it's about who you know. I hear that all the time. And while that is true, I believe that who you know matters, but it's more about who knows you, right? So I kind of look at that as, when you're networking with people in the industry, what separates me from someone else that's just reached out to the same hiring manager that same day? Like, are we different? The way I look at it is offer help, follow up, maintain relationships, and that will help them know you and remember you. And I think it's also important to be bold and persistent, but not pestering at the same time when you're reaching out to people. And another thing is, I've noticed that when people email me, they kind of say, I just want to pick your brain, like on what you've done in your career. I think that when you're reaching out to people and emailing people, it's important to have a specific hook or a question to that person. Like, let's say you really wanted to work at ESPN and you were interested in the ACC Network launch. Like, say that in your email. I think that shows me that you have done your research and that you're interested in, learning more about specific things and not just you kind of just want to network. You know what I mean? So I'd say that, and then I would also say figure out your why and let that drive you instead of your ego. So what I mean by that is just write down your passions, write down your intangibles, and decide your career off of that. What's for you is not always going to be for someone else. And you don't have to feel like you have to chase something because, you feel like you have to prove it or prove that you can do something. And I think a big part of that is evaluating yourself every 6 months to a year, because, your passions and your interests can always change, but evaluating yourself is important to kind of maintaining that. And then I would also say just something that I found to be really helpful for me is when you're finally going to land a job or you're, an internship or something somewhere else. I always say feel the fear, but do it anyway. And I know it sounds super cliche and everyone says that, but I think just personally moving to a new state right out of college and then another state, I was scared. And I think everyone is when they take a new opportunity, but just doing it and like letting yourself just fully take in the opportunity is going to take you very far. One more thing. So I was on this call with Adam Lefkoe. Not sure if you guys are familiar with him, a couple weeks ago. And he was, saying, he was giving us his advice. And he said, your mom is wrong. You're not the best. Don't take the hate. Don't take the love. Take the process. Work harder. Be humble. Don't compare yourself to anyone, but compete with yourself. Be friends with everyone, and that will take you a long way. And I love that quote. Now I live by it. I just heard it recently, but wanted to share that with you guys. Those are a couple of things that I think have really, played a big part in my career and getting me to where I am. So, but if I can help any of you, just let me know, reach out to me, DM me, email me, doesn't matter. I'm always happy to pay it forward.
That's by far the best advice any guest has given, so thank you for that.
I'm glad.
Which, speaking of like reaching out to people, how do you feel about, I guess, sending out handwritten letters? Like that's one thing that I did back in high school to a bunch of NFL general managers. And, I've always thought of, that a handwritten note would stand out more so than just an email or, or something, sent digitally. Like where do you stand on that and handwritten letters?
I'm a big believer in handwritten letters. If I got a handwritten letter, I would probably cry. I would be like, this is the nicest thing ever. So I actually write written letters as well. When I was at the NCAA, we have an opportunity to kind of go on a professional development trip. And I went to, I think it was the SEC offices, but anyways, I hand wrote a letter to Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and he wrote me a letter back a week later. And now we have that connection though, right? So I think that meant a lot to him, and it took me 5 seconds. It took me as long as, I obviously have to put it in a mailbox, but you're going to email the letter. You can take 5 more minutes to type it, to write it out. I think that is a great idea and does not go unnoticed for sure.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's the little things that end up being the big things at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
just all that time and effort and
yeah.
everything. And I mean, it that's awesome. That it brings that emotion out of someone, and just
Yeah.
like, and what's more heartwarming than getting a personalized letter in person.
Exactly. I would love that.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Olivia. I really enjoyed learning from you. You provided so much great insight and resources, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And like I said, guys, I'm super, easily accessible. Follow me on Twitter, DM me, email me. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to help. I'm glad I got to join you guys today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean, for co-hosting, and thank you everyone else for attending.